At the 1994 Sundance Film Festival, Paul Anderson, who was showcasing his directorial debut, Shopping, was busy pitching ideas to executives on his next film. He pitched a Fox exec on an Alien vs. Predator crossover, which didn't immediately lead to anything. His lunch with Roger Corman, where they agreed his next film would be a Death Race 2000 remake, also led to typical Hollywood delays. Eventually, these and other meetings with Hollywood executives convinced him to move from his native England. His first foray into the world of Hollywood filmmaking, Mortal Kombat, had enormous box office success, making over $122 million off its reported budget of $20 million, giving Anderson a new level of creative freedom and industry status. After turning down the opportunity to direct an X-Men film, his next project was to be the Kurt Russell action film, Soldier. However, after Russell requested a year-long delay to get in shape for the film, Anderson and his business partner and friend, Jeremy Bolt, decided to work on a film in the interim. This film would be a science fiction horror film based on a screenplay from Philip Eisner titled Event Horizon. It would be made under Paramount Pictures and filmed at Pinewood Studios in Anderson's native England. The film's production schedule would be rushed, with Anderson only having a year to get the film through pre- to post-production and out for release. Paramount had a strict deadline to release the film due to James Cameron's Titanic being delayed from its initial summer 1997 release window. Anderson was drawn to the film due to its melding of influences that he also loved, stating in a retrospective interview with Entertainment Weekly, "It was a haunted house movie like Robert Wise's The Haunting or The Shining. It was also a scary outer space movie like Alien, so it combined several things that I really loved." These films and several other Anderson favorites would have massive influence over the final product, with several scenes being taken straight from those films. Anderson would learn a valuable lesson on the set of Event Horizon due to working with Richard Juricic, who had been the special photographic effects supervisor on Blade Runner and was serving as Horizon's visual effects supervisor. Juricic insisted that the best way to accomplish a beautiful science fiction world in cinema is through a strong reliance on practical effects as much as possible. This would be a shift in filmmaking philosophy for Anderson, who had utilized CGI heavily in Mortal Kombat. Event Horizon would feature practical sets, effects, and a much more disciplined usage of CGI. The film's spaceship design was based on a digital scan of the Notre Dame Cathedral that Anderson had done. This design choice was in line with other stylistic decisions that gave the film a gothic horror feel. The film had a much more experienced and prestigious cast than previous Anderson films. Sam Neill, Lawrence Fishburne, Kathleen Quinlan, Jolie Richardson, Richard T. Jones, and Jack Noseworthy, alongside Anderson regulars Jason Isaacs and Sean Pertwee, made up the main cast. Anderson was moving up in the world of Hollywood filmmaking, gaining further creative control, larger budgets, better casts, and more experienced crew. His skills had also been developing, and he was excited to try his hand at something new, a horror film. After the grueling and nearly disastrous shoot, which Jolie Richardson described as cursed, the film was given a tight initial 6-week post-production schedule. Anderson spent the first 2 weeks finishing off the second unit work, leaving 4 weeks to edit the picture. Anderson and the film's editor, Martin Hunter, were only able to complete a rough cut of the film in this time frame. This rough cut, which clocked in at over 2 hours, did poorly during test screenings, which was also the first time that Paramount saw the more excessive gore that the film was using. Due to these poor test screenings and Paramount's demands for a less gruesome and gory picture, the film was then quickly cut down to 96 minutes. Most of these deleted scenes have now been lost, making a true director's cut practically impossible, though Anderson has detailed that the initial rough cut suffered from its long runtime and surely needed some work. The final cut of the film lost lots of its disturbing imagery. This rushed cut of the film was then pushed into a summer release window with an August 15, 1997 American release and a UK release 1 week later. The film was a box office flop, making $42 million off its reported budget of $60 million. It was also ravaged by critics. Ken Fox of TV Guide stated, "Too bad the only brains to be found on board this vessel are the ones splattered across the walls." Bill Kelly of the Sarasota Herald-Tribune stated, "The movie ransacks every horror and deep space movie since the first Alien for plot material." Kenneth Turan for the Los Angeles Times stated, "This technique can't help but be effective up to a point, but the number of people who equate being efficiently tortured with being well entertained is, one hopes, a finite one." Otherwise, the prognosis for film and society is about as grim as the doings on that sinister ghost ship. Amy Dawes of Los Angeles Daily News stated, Anderson seems to have more energy for the style of the thing than its substance. Event Horizon is ultimately more numbing than exhilarating. It collapses in and on itself, devoid of the oxygen of expansive ideas. And Scott Rosenberg for Salon.com quipped, trying to figure out just what went wrong in the creation of a movie as dreadful as this may ultimately be as futile as trying to ascertain what might lie on the other side of a black hole. This is but a taste of the overwhelmingly hostile reaction film critics had to Event Horizon at its release. It seemed that this film was destined to disappear into the void of forgotten films forever. However, in the golden age of home video, it slowly found its audience. The film's home video history is expansive, with its first release coming on VHS and Laserdisc on January 27, 1998. It then made its way to DVD through Paramount's Widescreen Collection series on December 15, 1998. It made its debut on Blu-ray on December 30, 2008, before ultimately making its way to 4K Ultra HD on August 9, 2022. The film slowly grew a cult classic status through word of mouth due to its second life on home video. Initially hated, the film is now beloved by many fans of sci-fi and horror films and has garnered attention for its similarity to the Warhammer 40K series, an influence acknowledged by screenwriter Philip Eisner. With this context laid out, let's discuss my thoughts on the film. Let's explore Event Horizon. Despite moving into a new genre, Anderson retained and further developed his populist filmmaking sensibilities. For him, I'm sure it hurt much more when the film flopped at the box office than the critical lashing his film received. While this was Paramount's attempt at a summer blockbuster, it isn't exactly a popcorn film. It's a dark horror film filled with gruesome imagery even after the cuts, and a cosmic horror vibe that is drenched in a gothic atmosphere. Nonetheless, it's still a fun movie, just not in the way you would expect for a summer popcorn blockbuster. The story is pretty thin, following a crew that enters a haunted spaceship and following them as they all have a psychological breakdown as a result of the ship's malevolent influence. The characters are likable, but we don't get to know many of them very well. Despite this paper-thin characterization, the cast does the best they can, and they make you care about these characters. There are moments of humor that land well, much better than in Mortal Kombat. The moments of horror are a mixed bag, with some cliched and overdone horror moments, and some moments that are awesomely brutal or scary. Anderson is trying to figure out how best to pull off the scare scenes, and heavily borrows from some of the greats to do so. For example, in a brief moment in an early scene, we slowly get to take in the ambiance of the ship, devoid of human life, a moment taken straight from the opening of Alien. In a scene later in the film, we have some unseen supernatural force banging on a door, sending a character into hysterics. This one was taken from The Haunting. We also have the bloodbath scene, which is an obvious grab from The Shining. I'm sure these scenes were a part of the reason why the film was lambasted by critics for being unoriginal. To me, they are of mixed effectiveness. I don't hate taking scenes from other movies if they're incorporated well. After all, don't all great artists steal? I do enjoy the bloodbath scene, for example, but in general, the film suffers from using horror movie cliches too much. Anderson's confidence in directing horror was not fully developed, and he leans on crutches of the genre. This hurts the horror of the film. That being said, there are transcendent moments of true gothic horror spectacle that are elevated into cosmic horror greatness. The Hellraiser inspiration for the film shines through, and these glimpses of hell, as well as gothic and cosmic horror, are disturbing and work so well. I wish the film leaned more on that than the sillier, cliche-filled haunted house moments. I think that despite the narrative's mixed execution of horror, there's enough here that is awesome that I can overlook some of the film's structural problems. This is in part due to the great cast the film has. Fishburne is fun in the movie, Neil is beautifully deranged, and the crew's reactions to the continually elevating horror unfolding are funny as hell at times.
We'll take the Lewis and Clark to a safe distance, and then I will launch attack missiles at the Event Horizon until I'm satisfied she's vaporized. Fuck this ship.
This infusion of humor helps the film and makes it so that it doesn't fall too deep into despair. It also makes the film extremely watchable. The practical effects are also great and have aged well. Yurchich's work and influence on the picture were essential. There's also some great music and sound design incorporated into the film that helps sell the vibes. That is what this film nails more than anything. Vibes. While there are problems with the narrative, which would be a recurring problem for Anderson, the vibes, the acting, the effects, and the visuals are so great that you forgive the film for its sins. This is something that has made Anderson such a polarizing filmmaker, as the incongruence between his film's eye-popping visuals and narrative incoherence continued to widen, and more people became less forgiving for his logical lapses. Event Horizon is a perfect late-night movie and has some great scenes that are effective at pulling off pure, creepy sci-fi horror vibes. The psychological moments are a play on Solaris, except much more explicitly horrifying. Neil's descent is fun to watch, but the scene where he has to watch his wife's death is dark. This is the balance of the film, having lots of fun moments mixed with truly dark, hellish moments of pure horror. Fishburne's moments of realization of the evil nature of the ship are great, and we get some essential moments with him, such as the scene where he explains a failed mission. Kathleen Quinlan also has some great psychologically haunting moments. This is what helps the film from falling into unintentional comedy territory for me. With worse actors, it probably would have. Event Horizon can be properly labeled a stupid movie. It can in good faith be criticized for its obvious and liberal borrowing from other genre films. It's a film that lacks even modestly effective screenwriting. However, despite this, it still holds up as a haunting, fun, goofy, and awesome movie. The practical effects aged gracefully and the horror of the film is real. It's clear to me why the film became a cult classic and why at the time of its release, it struggled to make an impact. It's fun to see now how elements from this movie have moved into the established visual and narrative language of the sci-fi genre, such as the gravity drive explanation scene.
A and point B coexist in the same space and time.
Like this, so you can take a shortcut through a higher dimension.
This is a movie that I love, despite its flaws, and have watched it more times than I can count. It's a comfort movie for me. Of course, there will always be a discussion of what could have been with this film, and that is warranted, but what we got is plenty good already. We don't see many films like this made anymore, and I hope one day Anderson himself will return to this style of filmmaking. Sci-fi horror still feels like a subgenre with immensely untapped potential, with limitless possibilities to explore the horror of the void. That's all for this video. Please leave a like and hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell icon for notifications as well. Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts on the film are. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.